Welcome to Western's training class on cash handling. This training, along with the safeguarding training, will satisfy the university policy requiring all cash handlers to be trained. There will be a short quiz at the end. Western has implemented policies and procedures to help ensure proper cash handling, and these form the basis for what is to come in this training. Links to the policies and procedures can be found at various places, but the direct link is the University Policies and Procedures website. Additional information on proper cash handling methods can be obtained by contacting Treasury Services at extension 3720. In this training, we will answer the questions: what does cash handling mean? How is cash defined? What are my responsibilities as a cash handler? What do I need to do to ensure I'm handling cash properly? And how do I ensure my safety when dealing with cash? We will first go over definitions of terms used throughout this training, then explain what to look for and what to do when accepting payments, some basic tips on balancing, when and how to deposit your payments with the Student Business Office, protecting the information you're collecting, protecting yourself, and archiving the payment information you receive. Okay, let's get started. What does cash handling mean? Cash handling is simply this: the act of receiving and/or depositing cash for Western activities. When we ask the question, what is cash, most of us would say the bills and coin I have in my wallet or pocket. But the university has a broader definition of cash. So for purposes of this training course and university policies and procedures, the term cash not only refers to currency and coin, but it includes checks, traveler's checks, money orders, debit, and credit cards. A cash handler is someone who receives and/or deposits cash and is responsible for the safeguarding of the cash received. Regardless of how much or how often you receive cash, if you receive cash in person or through the mail, then you are a cash handler. Separation of duties is an internal control and simply means that different people perform different aspects of the process of collecting cash. If your department bills customers for services performed, then separation of duties might look like this. One person bills the customer, a different person receives the payment, and finally a third person would verify that the money was posted. Dual control, which is another internal control, is pretty self-explanatory. Two people in control of the cash at the same time. For example, when accepting cash from a customer, you advise the customer how much to pay, they provide you with the cash, you verify the cash while the customer is there, and post or record the payment, providing a receipt to the customer. Another example is when a payment is received in the mail. Two employees open and document what is received. So what happens if you don't have enough people in your department to separate duties or use dual control? See if you can work with another department to share duties or open mail and dual control. An alternative is to have all payments sent directly to the Student Business Office for processing. If this isn't feasible, then you must use compensating controls. Examples of compensating controls include rotating duties and increased monitoring. Make sure one person is not the only person who performs the cash handling duties. Rotate the duties. One person does it for a week or so, and then another person does it, switching back and forth. Increased monitoring, more frequent and more detailed review of the work being done to make sure everything received is posted. An unscheduled review of logs and deposits is also very helpful. Both of these examples of compensating controls are deterrents and not preventative measures. When an individual knows that someone is monitoring what they are doing, that individual is more careful and less likely to make mistakes or take advantage of the fact that no one is monitoring them. Contact the Treasury Services Manager for help with compensating controls specific to your area. Now let's talk about the different forms of cash and what to look for when you receive them. Western accepts U.S. and Canadian currency and coin. We do not accept any other international money. All currency and coin should be counted twice, once with the customer in front of you so they can see you count it, and then one more time before you place it in your drawer. It's also good practice to note on the transaction receipt the cash received and given out. This can be helpful in finding outages. The value of Canadian currency is not the same as U.S. currency, and it changes daily. Contact the cashiers in the Student Business Office at 4530 for the current exchange rate so the transaction can be processed at the proper U.S. equivalent. Your deposit should reflect the U.S. value of the Canadian currency. If you do not get the exchange rate at the time of the transaction, the rate will be obtained by the cashiers and your deposit will be adjusted accordingly. Checks include both business and personal checks, traveler's checks, money orders, and drafts. There are things to look for on a check to ensure we will receive proper credit. A check must be personalized. An individual's complete name and address should be pre-printed on the check. If it isn't, have the customer write their current physical address and phone number on it. The date must be current. Never accept a post-dated or stale-dated check. A stale-dated check is a check with a date more than 6 months in the past. A post-dated check is one with a date sometime in the future. If you receive a post-dated check, do not hold it. Submit the check for deposit. The payee must be Western Washington University. Western and WWU are also acceptable. Amounts need to be shown both numerically and written out. Verify that these are the same. The written amount is the legal amount. If the numerical and written amounts differ, the bank will process the check based on the written amount. If the customer is not there to correct the check, then the check must be deposited for the written amount. We do not give cash back on checks, so make sure the amount is not more than what is due. Bank name and address must be pre-printed on the check. Check the microencoding. This is the string of numbers along the bottom of every check. If there is no microencoding, it is likely a bank draft and we do not accept these. The micro includes the bank's routing number, the customer's bank account number, and check number. Look at the routing number, usually located on the left bottom corner of the check. U.S. checks have 9 numbers and Canadian checks have 8. If it's a Canadian check, make sure it says payable in U.S. funds somewhere on the check. Canadian checks that do not state payable in U.S. funds must be converted to the U.S. equivalent. Call the cashiers in the student business office for the contracted exchange rate for the day. Customer signature. This is the authorization by the account holder to pay the check. A check without a signature will likely be returned by the bank. Any adjustments needed to make the check acceptable must be done by the customer and they must initial their changes. Once the customer has left, you cannot alter the check. It is check fraud to alter a check that isn't yours, even if you think you know the intent of the customer. Money orders are treated exactly like checks. These look a little different than a personal or business check, but have the same characteristics as a check. When accepting traveler's checks, make sure the owner signs them in your presence. Traveler's checks are treated like cash, but processed like checks. This means that you include them in your check totals on tape runs, but you can give change. You will not likely see a bank draft, but you should be aware of how to handle one in case you are presented with one. Bank drafts are payments received from foreign entities. They usually have little to no microencoding across the bottom. They are processed through an agency, not a bank, which adds additional costs. Plus, they're not always honored. Because of these complications, bank drafts are not accepted as a form of payment. Call the vendor and make other arrangements for the payment. If they can't pay by check in U.S. funds, then contact Treasury Services for other options. Checks, traveler's checks, and money orders must be endorsed immediately with a stamp or by hand. The endorsement should include the following: for deposit only, Western Washington University, our bank's name, the department name, and the bank account number. Contact the cashiers in the student business office to order your endorsement stamp. There are strict guidelines to accepting credit and debit cards as payment. If your department is not authorized to accept them, refer your customer to the cashiers in the student business office to have the payment processed there. The card must be present when dealing face-to-face with the customer. Check ID. Credit card information can be taken over the phone, but it is discouraged. There is a greater risk of fraud when taking the card information over the phone and a greater risk to the university. Remember to protect this card information. Treat this information as you would want your card information treated. Do not maintain any credit card information in your department either on paper or on a computer, including but not limited to spreadsheets or emails. Payment card industry data security standards have strict requirements regarding the handling of credit card information. Of the three major pieces of credit card information, the card number, the expiration date, and the security code, we can only maintain the last 4 digits of the card number. The first 12 digits of the card number, the expiration date, and the security code must be destroyed once the card is processed. If you are blacking out the card number, expiration date, and security code, be sure that no one else can read the number. Hold it up to the light to be sure that the numbers cannot be seen. The best way to ensure that the appropriate information is destroyed is to cut it out of the paper and shred that piece. The next best way is to take a ballpoint pen and scribble or scratch out the information. Do not destroy the entire document, especially if there is a signature. University policy dictates that a receipt be provided to the customer. Receipts must contain the following information: Western logo or name of the university. They should be pre-printed and sequentially numbered. They should have the date, who the cash was received from, the amount of the cash, what it was received for, the name of the person receiving the cash, their department, and finally indicate what kind of cash was received: check, currency, or credit card. Standardized manual receipts can be obtained from the cashiers in the student business office. When accepting cash through the mail, 2 people should be present. Log or run a calculator tape of all the cash items received, and both recipients sign the tape or the log. Keep the mail received separate from any in-person transactions processed. Once the mail has been processed, give the mail log to your supervisor for reconciliation. Millions of dollars are lost every year due to the counterfeiting of currency, checks, and credit cards. While it is not as likely to happen here at Western, the possibility still exists, and you should be aware of what to look for when handling cash to avoid accepting counterfeits. The amount of counterfeit currency in circulation in the United States is actually very small, only 0.03% of total currency. About 75% of all known counterfeit currency is seized before it reaches the public. But it is in your interest always to examine any currency you receive, because you must assume the loss for any counterfeit note you accept. Don't assume that only large bills are counterfeited. That's what they will be hoping for. 5s and 10s are just as likely to be counterfeited as a $20, $50, or $100 bill. U.S. currency has traditionally had a number of features that deter counterfeiters. One is the cotton and linen rag paper, which has a distinctive, pliable feel and has tiny red and blue fibers embedded in it. Inks manufactured according to secret formulas by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing also help prevent counterfeiting. As advances in technology have made digital counterfeiting easier, more advanced security features have been added to deter counterfeiting. 2 advanced features, a security thread and microprinting, have been added. To stay ahead of counterfeiters, the Treasury plans to introduce new designs every 7 to 10 years. Redesigned and existing notes will circulate at the same time, with the new notes replacing the older ones as they wear out. For a complete list of security features of each bill, visit the U.S. Treasury website. There are things we can do to reduce the risk of accepting counterfeit money. While there are many tools to purchase to help detect counterfeit currency, the best and least expensive way is to know what the different denominations look like and what to check for. Here are examples of the $10, $20, $50, and $100 bills. The U.S. Treasury, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and the U.S. Secret Service all have information on U.S. currency and what to look for. Credit cards can also be counterfeited. All valid credit and debit cards display a set of unique security features that every merchant should be familiar with. Every time you accept a credit or debit card for payment and while waiting for the issuer's response to your authorization request, you should examine these features to ensure that they have not been altered or tampered with in any way. Remember that an authorization approval does not protect you against fraud, and it is your responsibility to verify the validity of the transaction. Here are some things to check for. The logo is usually displayed at the bottom right, top left, or top right corner. The upper left placement is allowed only on chip cards. The account number must appear in one line and be clear and uniform in size and spacing. The first 4 digits of the account number must be printed directly below it. This is the issuer's bank identification number, or BIN. These 2 numbers must be identical. The expiration date should be located below the account number and be in the format month, year. Expired cards are invalid and should not be accepted. The cardholder name or a generic title may be printed or embossed on the card. However, on some cards the field may be blank. Some cards feature a chip, which is located above the account number. The hologram can be placed anywhere on the front or back of the card. This three-dimensional image should appear to move as you rotate or tilt the card. The magnetic stripe contains the card account's identifying information. When the card is swiped through a point-of-sale terminal, the encoded information is read and displayed on the terminal screen. The displayed information should match the one on the card itself. The signature panel must appear on the back of the card with the card type Visa, MasterCard, etc. printed repeatedly within an ultraviolet element. Depending on the card design, the panel may feature the full account number printed on it, only its last 4 digits, or none at all. If the signature panel is scratched or erased, the word void appears underneath repeatedly. The 3-digit security code, or card verification value, CVV2, number appears in a white box either to the right of the signature panel or within it. CVV2 is used in card-not-present transactions to verify that the customer is in possession of the card. American Express has their number above and to the right of the card number on the front of the card. Remember, education on what the real stuff looks like is your best weapon against accepting counterfeit cash. Balance cash receipts on a daily basis. Balance the physical cash to a banner report, cash register tape, or some other physical receipt used during the transaction. Forced balancing is not allowed. Even if you are only a penny or two out of balance, you may not take the excess out to create a slush fund for future outages or take money from your own pocket to make up the difference. No changing the composition of cash by substituting checks for currency. In other words, you can't write the university a check and take the corresponding currency in exchange. All differences get reported to account G571. You will be provided with a detailed list of tips for balancing at the end of this training. Washington state law requires that cash received by governmental agencies be deposited within 24 hours of receipt. In certain circumstances, exceptions can be made by Treasury Services. Don't send any form of cash via campus mail. This includes checks. All cash must be hand-delivered to the university cashiers in the student business office. The departmental deposit form can be found by searching for Departmental Deposit on Western Form's webpage. Here are a few things to remember when completing a deposit slip. Include your phone number. Remember to complete your budget string. You can use a fast index or the complete string. Either way, an account number is required. List U.S. and Canadian cash separately. Remember to include traveler's checks with your check run. Attach a calculator tape of your checks and also attach a calculator tape of the entire deposit. Who is responsible for safeguarding cash? Anyone who handles cash. Remember our definition? If cash goes missing while in your custody, you are responsible. How does one safeguard cash? This is done through common sense and internal controls. Treat the cash as if it were your own. Never turn your back on or walk away from your cash, especially if there is someone else nearby. Internal controls are put in place to protect the cash, but also to protect you. The two most common and most effective internal controls used in cash handling are separation of duties and dual control, defined earlier. These are most effective because they are designed to help prevent the loss of cash. You are responsible for the cash in your custody. If you leave the area in which you are handling cash, even if it is just for a moment, lock it up. This does not mean that you put it in a lockbox that is sitting on top of your desk. This means locking it away so that it will not easily be removed by someone else. When leaving for the day, make sure the cash is locked in a secure, stationary compartment like a safe or a desk, and whenever possible, make it a fire-resistant compartment. As employees of the university, it is our responsibility to safeguard our customers' and students' non-public financial information from potential identity thieves. Non-public financial information includes, but is not limited to, credit and debit card numbers, bank account numbers, dates of birth, and social security numbers. Remember, Never disclose customer information to anyone except fellow employees with the business need to know. If the documents containing the confidential information must be retained for business and/or archiving reasons, then black out as much of the confidential information as possible. Social Security numbers and debit and credit card numbers should be reduced to the last 4 digits. Transaction information must be retained for 6 years. When no longer required to hold on to, never throw this confidential information in the garbage. Always shred it. The focus of this section in cash handling is your safety. We will discuss general safety rules, introduce and explain the 4 C's, and talk about procedures to follow in the event of a robbery. When transporting cash to the cashiers, place it in a locked, traceable bag. You should disguise the bag by placing it in a brown bag or something similar. If you make frequent or regular trips to the student business office, vary your route for safety. Transporting cash should be performed under dual control whenever possible. A university police escort is available at all times if needed. Call extension 3555 and request a funds escort. You may have to wait until they are available. Here are emergency contact numbers for the University Police and the Bellingham Police. Safety is a primary concern in cash handling. Cash handlers must consider safety in the case of a robbery, whether in the office or while transporting cash, and in other emergencies like a fire or a natural disaster. Regardless of the situation, your safety and the safety of others around you is the first priority. What do you do in a robbery? Remember, safety is our primary concern, yours and others in the area, and the main goal is to get the robber out quickly. If your department has an alarm, either you or a coworker should press it, but only if you can do so safely. Try to remember the 4 C's: calm, confiscate, cooperate, and contemplate. Stay calm. Try to act normal and polite. Confiscate. If you're handed a note, try to keep it, but only if it's safe. Try not to handle it too much to preserve any fingerprints. Cooperate with the robber. Do what's asked and nothing more. Don't make any provoking comments or startle them by sudden movements. Let them know exactly what you're doing, especially if you need to reach below the counter. And contemplate. Make observations of the robber, hair, skin, and eye color, distinguishing marks or tattoos, their height, etc., and pay attention to what direction they leave in. If you would like more information on how to handle a robbery during and after, contact the University Police Department 3555 and request a talk. What should you do if you're robbed when transporting cash? Let the robber have the cash. Don't put up a struggle. Try to get away as quickly and safely as possible. Look for a safe place like a crowd of people or a well-lit area. Call public safety from an emergency phone on campus or any other phone available. Write down a description of the robber. Don't discuss the details of the robbery with anyone but the police. Original documents, also known as official copies, must be retained for 6 years. This is due to state legal requirements. Original documents are those directly related to your transactions, such as pre-numbered receipts and signatures for credit card purchases. You can store your records in your department if you choose. Depending on the number of transactions you process, this could get to be a lot of paper. An alternative is to use the University Archives and Records Center. It's free. Requests for storage can be made electronically, and it can eliminate unnecessary clutter in your office. For more information, contact the University Archiving Manager at extension 3124. This concludes the cash handling presentation. If you have further questions, you can contact Treasury Services at extension 3720. To make sure you get credit for this course, don't forget to take the quiz.